Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and experience with us. I watched the movie today for the second time, and like the first time, I got the goosebumps. And at the same time, I felt a great warmth in my heart. I think the goosebumps came from the authenticity of the movie. There's something very real in it. And the warmth, I guess, came from the act of coming together around the death, which we witnessed while watching the movie. Before I get to my questions, I would like to mention Ethan's name again and honor his life. Yes, we have seen bits and pieces of Ethan's life in the movie. But my first question is, can you tell us a little bit about Ethan from your point of view? What's left in your heart about Ethan?
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. It's okay if I jump in, Greg? Are you good? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I feel into Ethan's spirit, I feel this expansiveness and this openness. His open heart and his vulnerability left such an impression on me. And his willingness to share kind of his deepest fears and experiences of life, just him sharing what he shared about not receiving love. So much of what he shared resonated deeply with my soul. And I'm left with that knowing that we can all live with that degree of openness and that the spirit or somehow things will be met, our deepest wishes and desires will be met. Somebody's listening, something's listening, some force. I don't know how it is, but the way it unfolded, I only got to meet him 2 weeks before he died. First time I ever connected with him. So we weren't old friends or anything, but the depth of connection was so potent and everlasting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you, Greg?
Yes, you can hear me okay, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it begins with when I first came to the home where Ethan had just come from the hospice center. And I met his mother first, Linda. And Linda came and met me at the door and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Do you know Ethan?" And I said, "No, I don't know Ethan." And she said, "What is going on?" She said, "I have never experienced this before. Everyone is here and no one knows Ethan." And so that was the opening to this whole thing for me. And what that was and was that Ethan, being who he is, a teacher, really, a young teacher, and his teaching was very laser focused. He knew what he wanted to share with the world. And he gave us permission, because of his action, he gave us permission to come together in a very organic, spontaneous, I don't know if we can do this way. And everyone showed up. And so when I think of Ethan, I think of him as a master who created this opportunity for us, as one of the men, Brent, said in the film, for a bunch of strangers to say yes. And so I think personally for myself, that's really what the movie is about. Death happens, yes. And that is a focus given to us so that we could come together. But it really becomes more about what was happening all those days in this community that gathered. So that's what Ethan has done for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We don't say it much, right? We don't say it much around us. Yeah.
Yes, right.
I also volunteer in palliative care as well. Actually, I live in Australia right now. I'm in Turkey, and I volunteer in one of the state hospital. But even in palliative care, I'm sure Aditi, you know much better than me as a doctor. And Greg, as far as I know, your background is you're a registered nurse as well, or yeah.
Right. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so it's hard to see examples like Ethan. It's hard to see. Yeah, so I deeply appreciate for that movie and your being here as well. And Aditi, as you said before, just you are not the original doctor of, right, Ethan. You just met him right before they started filming. And he didn't want to die in a hospice. Instead, he wanted to die in a community. It was kind of his last wish. How did you meet him and how did you decide to honor his very unique last wish?
Yeah, thank you. A friend of mine, Jojo, who's in the film playing the iktar, the stringed instrument and chanting in one scene, he had been following Ethan on social media, TikTok, YouTube, I think probably YouTube and Facebook mainly. And so he'd been watching Ethan's journey for probably a year and mentioned him once or twice, but I never really watched any videos until Jojo called me 2 weeks before Ethan died and said, there's a brother that needs our help. You know, he's dying and he wants to film his dying process. So Jojo called Scott Kirschenbaum, the director of the film, who's a mutual friend. And then Jojo called me saying he wants to die in community. And he has some connection to Asheville. At that time, Ethan was 2 hours from Asheville in Charlotte, which is another city where his dad was living. And so because I've organized community in Asheville for some time, and Jojo knows I'm passionate about supporting people in these days, he called me and I immediately wanted to help. Just, I said yes right away. And first met with Ethan on a Zoom call, kind of like you do in palliative care, getting a sense of where he was at, because you can hear from a family or friend that so-and-so wants this, but it's really helpful to, if you can, to speak directly to the person. So we met on a Zoom call. It was March 17th. I remember it. Everything became very vivid and crystal clear during this time. So that was also, I was paying attention to the energetics of it. But I did a Zoom call with him, and he basically said, he reiterated what Jojo said. So we quickly brought him to the inpatient hospice where I worked. Because in this, the beauty of the medical system is that everything's pretty efficient. There's a system, there's a process, things move quickly, oftentimes, not always. But it was, there was a way to get him to Asheville quickly. So we did that. And then the place where I worked, they said, after kind of encouraging us to keep encouraging us along the way, that this is all happened in one day. I was talking to people in risk management, legal, there's a lot of logistics with filming.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And despite progress in that, an hour before Ethan was coming in the ambulance, the highest level administrator, the president of the division of the hospital system, said, you know what, this is not going to happen where you were at the inpatient facility. It's too risky. Something might get leaked with hospice. There's just fear around being seen, I guess. And so at that moment, I knew, okay, so we can't film it at this facility. What do we do? And then that's how things unfolded quickly from there to get him to a home setting, all within a day or two. So things moved quickly.
I think it's unbelievable to hear the back of the story as well. I can imagine the procedure that the hospital asks and everything. It might be quite difficult, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Good question.
Gamze, do you have any question?
Yes. Thank you. Hello, Aditi. Hello, Gregory, again.
Hello.
As a community death and grief platform in Turkey, we think that is more than a medical event. And we say community support should be there as well. I want to ask you, what are the elements of a community when it's come to death and dying? What can community offer about death, and what is the benefit of it?
It's a deep question, huh?
Greg, do you want to start?
Oh, yes. Greg will start. I take responsibility for my experience, and I leave it at that. And it seems to me, as humans, it's important for us to have a focus, what I call a laser focus. And when we have this focus, and the focus that I will refer to in the community that we are walking together in, the focus happens to be the service of those in their season of dying. And that gives the rest of us the opportunity to really look at ourselves and to be able to come together with this awareness of this focus that we are engaged in what I will say is a unified purpose. We have a unified purpose, and it's very definable. This is why we're here. And in my life, and I know in Aditi's life, not speaking for her, but just observing, serving those in their dying season is of a great importance for not just them, but for me. It gives me permission to take care of myself, because I have come to find that I can't do this work unless I am what we would say in these mountains, a hollow bone, that I'm empty, and that I allow for, in my language, spirit to breathe through me. And in order for me to be truly available, and for us as a community to be available, then we're willing to engage in what I will call is a holy relationship, where we're looking at ourselves the whole time. Because as I said in the film, it came to me that all healing is release. And to me, that means that there's an essential nature of us. And that essential nature for me, in my understanding, is love. And so what can I release that is not related to my essential nature, which is love? I believe that's the fundamental purpose of why we come together like this. And so we are putting all of our energy into being that hollow bone, so that we may allow love to flow with the ones we are serving that come to us and say, I'm asking for your help, like Ethan did. I think that's what I would say about community.
Thank you.
That's beautiful, Greg. Yeah, I think, there are so many different types of communities in our lives, and there's the church community, even the medical community is a community. And that common purpose, shared focus is part of inherent in the definition of what a community is. And I think what's unique to the community supported end of life care movement, or the work that we're doing in community, is this piece of really being honest with who we are and what we're bringing to the bedside, so that we can remain that hollow bone. I love that. And the vulnerability piece, the humility piece, all of these things that take a lot of cultivating within our own being before we can really show up fully for another human being. I think that's what makes this community supported way a little unique. Because some communities never really, I've been in many that don't ever really get beyond the, I don't want to call it superficial layer, but one layer of being, right? Different ways of being so.
Mm.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
could say superficial, like the first layer. That
Yeah,
you
the
see,
first
like,
layer. Yeah,
yeah,
not
without
going
being
into
judgmental.
deeper.
Yeah, there you go.
I think I understand you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, you are both medical people, like you're a nurse and doctor, and are you still practicing
I'm very part-time
part-time?
practicing. Mm-hmm.
And you, Greg?
No, I am not practicing in a primary care role as a nurse any longer. My focus is really more about what's happening in this community. And even though I have many, many years of nursing practice, we have lots of nurses and lots of people who have shown up that are younger and have a great deal of experience themselves, and other physicians as well. But as you may know, this community is not a hospice. This is not.
Yeah.
I think one of the core elements of this community is this is more of a familial model, a family model. It's a
Is it
family
first? Is it
home.
first in the US, by the way? No?
I know. Aditi, you could probably answer that better.
It's there's a model out there, but we are kind of bringing our own elements to it. So expanding on the existing models that haven't really taken off. We're the only one in our state, for example.
Okay.
So
Yeah, okay.
pretty rare to find a community, but I hope and trust that will change.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I would like to give a brief introduction to our audiences as well. You have established the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, right? It's in North Carolina, Asheville, as far as I know. It's a community care home that offers end-of-life care in a homely environment. And you opened it, I guess, after Ethan's death. But I think he was not the only reason, right? Probably you were, I don't know, maybe it was your long-term dream, kind of, maybe. Yeah, I cannot even imagine how much work has gone into the creation of such a center. I cannot imagine. Even though we are not on the same land, same country, I thank you. I thank you for your contribution to life in that sense, because you are showing that, you're saying that it can be done differently than what we know. And I have read the center's mission statement on your website, which is the mission of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying is to create a community that embodies living a meaningful life through inner exploration and growth, service, and community-supported end-of-life care. I read it and I said, wow. So you provide a comfort care home for end-of-life care for those who are unable to or do not wish to die in their own homes. So when was the center open and how is the interest? Yeah,
Thank you. The center was formed in 2017 as a private business, really. In our state, in our country, there's different, I'm sure it's similar all over the world, but different ways to open a business. This was a for-profit entity that was really going to be a resource hub, And when Ethan died, we made it a nonprofit. After he died, I transitioned to a nonprofit NGO in 2021. And then we were gifted use of this beautiful home overlooking the valley and the mountains here in 2022. So we actually have spent the last year really preparing the space, preparing our volunteers to open in January. So we'll probably formally open January 2024. And initially, and Greg and I met in 2014, so a little bit of timeline, 10 years ago, and started envisioning how aging and dying could look different in our community. So I believe this is really a collective vision. That's how I speak to this work and this unfolding. And initially in 2021, I sort of opened up volunteerism thinking it would be a slow trickle, maybe a few people a month would hear about us and want to help. And I didn't realize there'd be so much interest. So we have almost 200 volunteers, more on the wait list, and just a lot of hunger for community and spirit-centered work and service, and also just self-reflection and contemplation on death. So been very
I'm
well
so
received.
glad. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. 200 is quite a number, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
And other communities are asking us for some support and turning to us for guidance and wanting to do this in their own spaces. So it's been beautiful. It's touching some part of our souls, I think. We're remembering.
It's beautiful. Yeah. While watching the movie, actually, I made connections with my own experiences as well as I work as a volunteering as a death doula in a hospital. But I'm not a doctor or nurse, and please don't misunderstand me. I have no intention to compare myself with doctors and nurses, but sometimes I feel very, very lucky that I'm not a doctor or a nurse because there are rules and protocols that you naturally have to follow. And you have to stay within your scope of practice.
Yeah.
Whereas I have to follow less
Yeah.
institutionalized approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a doctor and a nurse, how do you think the doctors and nurses or other medical personnel can be more reflective of their patients' wishes under all these protocols? Of course, within the limits that you have to follow. Is there a way to do it more?
I do have an answer to that. And I would say that one of I think the beautiful parts of this community that we are creating together is that you don't need to be a doctor or nurse to serve and to come and be. Even as a nurse, the people that are coming to support as a caregiver are not functioning formally as a nurse. So we don't have nursing positions. We don't have physician positions. So if a physician comes like Aditi or many others that we have, and they want to provide support based on their experience, then they're coming as a direct care volunteer. They're coming to help, to provide help because they have experience. But I think it's important to acknowledge that, because at some point I realized, even teaching, I realized in my teaching that there were many people, young people, that were really wanting to be able to support their family in this season of their life. In other words, I remember one young woman was talking to me, and she asked me about the fact that her grandmother was coming home and she was going to be receiving hospice care. And did this granddaughter need to go get training first to be able to help her grandmother? And my answer was a very quick no. You don't have to do that. You're her granddaughter. You can go and stand and be with her and love her. And there are things you'll learn, and you learn by doing experiential learning. And so that's what we're teaching. We're allowing and teaching those who come, regardless of any healthcare experience, if they want to be in that role of a direct caregiver, then we will teach them how to do that. And so this is, I think, some of the beauty of this model, really, in our healthcare system here in the United States, is creating something else. It's not as rigid, because neither of us believe that death is a medical experience. So this is about who is willing to participate and supporting them to do that. That's what I would know to say about that.
Yeah.
Beautiful answer. Thank you.
And I would add that, in terms of any of you who are working in the medical field, allopathic Western medical model doesn't really have an emphasis on prevention. So there's not much focus on well-being of staff, and some communities do, but in general, as a rule of thumb, self-care isn't really prioritized in healthcare. And you know that
Mm-hmm.
based on the medical training, I mean, I did 30-hour shifts in a row. So unnatural, right? It used to be 100-hour shifts for doctors. So it's really up to you as an individual, I would say, to have a practice and a way of recharging and centering and taking care of your spirit while you're doing the work, the good work in the model.
Self-compassion, I guess, is a big part of it, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I
And then
agree.
you get an opportunity to really look at, our own self-judgment too. If I need a mental health day, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually the deepest respect for self. So
it's very human, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
I learned a long time ago that I can't share something I don't have.
Oh, it's
If I
beautiful.
don't have it, I can't share it. And if I don't have compassion for myself, I don't have it to offer you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's a big part of it.
Yes.
Totally agree on that. Thank you for reminding it. Thanks. Thank you. Gamze, do you have one more question?
Yeah, I have. At the end of the movie, Aditi, you say, there is gratitude in me. I think it's another important moment for you. Where does that gratitude come from, and what is in it?
Gosh, such a beautiful question. I think because I have had, I guess majority of my life has been working or having an awareness of death and its teachings, because I started volunteering for hospice when I was 17, so I'm 42 now. I think because of that, I've really been able to appreciate each moment and each experience and anything that I encounter in life. And so I have had a deep gratitude practice just organically. I know that's a thing now to really focus on and cultivate, but it started when I was 17, when I started working for hospice. It just became a natural result of being so close and intimate with those who are dying. And so I think for me, because I saw Ethan was on his path, and it's not my nature to wish things to be different. All you're left with is this deep gratitude, this feeling of just reverence and appreciation for the moments and the gifts with the sadness and the grief being a part of it. But I don't dwell in the sadness, I think. Oh, no, I think when they, it's so funny. Films are so funny because I don't even remember when the camera was on, I think he had just taken his last, maybe like hours after his last breath when we were having that conversation. And I think I knew my life was never going to be the same. As he was taking his last breath in the next room, I was having a conversation. I think one of the staff at my organization called me and said, "I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay in this job because of you, and I can't do it anymore, and I'm so sorry." And I just knew everybody, it was just my time. She was leaving. She had the courage to leave. Ethan had so much courage, and I knew I had to just step into this world that I'm in now. And I knew I just had appreciation for that awareness too, which was a gift from this whole 2-week experience. So
yeah. Also, maybe we could get 1 or 2 questions from the audiences as well. If someone want to ask a question, you can write it on the chat, or you can just raise your hands. I guess it's on the reaction button. If you have any questions. Gamze, I think, do you have one more question maybe? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, one more I have. About the movie, what do you hope the movie shares?
Yeah.
Well, I will say that one thing that is very big that the movie has given me is the opportunity to share with you across the oceans. I would not meet you otherwise, and it would all be very local. And so for me, this is very miraculous.
Isn't it? Yeah.
that we are engaged. This community is expanding, and just because of our being willing to show up and participate in this film. So the film is already doing exponentially more than I would know about if the film wasn't in its place, you know. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. This is very sweet for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Greg. It's true. I think it's I have a deeper appreciation for the power of documentary filmmaking than I ever have before. It's such an amazing tool, and it's so immersive into an experience. It was like that. It's an Ethan journey that you experience watching the film, I hope, and my experience still. It takes me right back to that moment in time. And so, what a gift and what a tool to stimulate discussion, to help us reflect on things and to connect, like Greg said. So, such an honor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And there are two questions, I guess. Like first, Gonca has a question. Gonca Hanım, siz sorabilirsiniz sorunuzu.
I think because the paradigm of medicine is so different from the paradigm we're stepping into now, there's much more of in medicine, a doctor kind of has, I don't have to explain myself. I just put orders in, they get done. Like it's a very efficient, hierarchical model. And there's some familiarity with that, of course, because I've been doing it, 10 plus years. And this model is very much collaborative, slowing down. It's just different. And so I catch myself sometimes, especially because we're still working with existing hospice, the medical model. They come into the home. We're not separate from them. We're complementary to them. And so when the nurse came in, for example, and did something that I would do differently, I had to just wait because I'm not a doctor, and I had to allow the system and act like a family member, which is less efficient. So I had to wait for her to call the doctor, and so there's some ways that it's just a little bit of an adjustment, but I appreciate it.
I think it's very different, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks. And how about you, Greg?
Well, I would say for myself, this is the fruit that is on the tree that I've been watering for many years, and for myself. Just a quick story: 23 years ago, I started looking for this work, and it happened in a fasting prayer ritual that I was participating in, actually in southern Mexico. And my teacher was sharing with me, initiating me into what we would call as the vision quest, or a rite of passage into my life from here on, And so in that time on the mountain for 4 days and 4 nights, in that fasting prayer, I saw a vision in my mind. And I knew what the work was. So I received this download of, this is the work that is for you, should you choose to accept it. This is your work. I saw a place. I said, well, that's a beautiful place. I understood the work in my heart, that it would be literally holding the medicine of fire for those who are crossing. So for 23 years, I wondered where that was. And when I drove onto the property for the first time to actually stand where we are now, I knew that the vision I saw was this place. It wasn't an example. It was this place. And so I knew I was standing on the ground where I'm supposed to be. And so for me to be able to acknowledge the experience I've had for over 40 years in healthcare, and to then just let that go, and then the need to practice that same way, because this fruit has come. And so for me, it's a great release. It's a great healing.
Oh,
Feels
thank
very
you.
good for me. Yeah.
For everyone, I guess it's a great
Yeah.
healing. Thank you.
Yeah.
There are more questions, but I'm not sure about your time because we started late and due to some technical issues. Do you have time to get 2 more questions? Are you okay with
Perfect.
that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect.
That'll be
Thank
okay.
you.
Well, you hear that phrase sometimes, you live as you die, or you die as you live,
Mm.
you die as you lived. And I haven't always seen that to be true. I think some people can have, in the face of death, there's these awakenings and realizations and understandings of what's real and what's meaningful. So there is potential for transformation at the end of life. So you may not have to do anything. If you do nothing, you still may have a beautiful death and you may be able to surrender to it. However, I think this idea of practicing death, like practicing for death, die before you die, in our waking lived experiences while we're healthy, can really support us to surrender to it when it's here for us.
Mhm.
Because I think there's elements of letting go, accepting what is, and that could be even in relationship with a person, a partner. It could be in relation to your job. It could be in relation to anything, a physical attachment to anything in life. It's like how comfortable are we practicing the little deaths along the way to the ultimate release? So I think, and that to me comes back to a contemplative practice, really spending time reflecting on the reality of being human, which so few, my world and my family, I have a wonderful family, but we spend very little time talking about any of this. There's much more emphasis on the sports teams or the, travel and all the good things in life. But if we can just add a little more balance, like just bring this into the experience of the mainstream just a little bit, it can go a long way. So I think having conversations like this is a good place to start, and then a contemplative practice. And there's, multiple faith traditions that have their own unique practices. So you'll find some way of connecting to the truth of who you are. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
I would also offer that I can't remember if it was Socrates or Plato, one of them, their last words on their dying bed was practice dying. That's the last words. And as Aditi said, I've come to understand a definition for dying that I use in relation to myself. And that is, I've come to see with having the opportunity to serve thousands over 40 years. In that time, whether very quickly or very gradually, lots of different environmental situations. I've come to experience that dying for me means it's the transition or the in-between who I thought I was and who I choose to be. And that for me is the essential nature of dying today. You can ask me tomorrow and see if that changes. But today, and for some time now, this is how it feels for me. And in that definition, there's no body mention of the body. And so that for me is a part of what I'm learning as I practice dying in my life, that we have our season of dying, I think, many times in this same body, with our transitions that we weren't expecting. One of the places I really felt that in a very, very deep way was when my wife, Judy, died unexpectedly 10 years ago. And I realized this for myself, that there was a big part of me that died. And that part of me her name was Judy, and I call it the Judy Gregg. That person also died.
Mm.
Because I would never be that person with anyone else on this earth because of our relation, you understand that.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's for me what it means when we look at practice dying. And the more we're willing to look at that, to look within, we have so many ideas about how we have fear to look within. But that's when we really look within, it's not fear that we find, is what I've seen.
Yeah.
And when our bodies are giving us the signals that they're not going to continue functioning as long as we thought, as in a gradual dying season, then that really catches our attention. And we looking within, even if a little bit, we start looking within.
Yeah.
So my question is, why wait?
Why wait? Start now, huh?
Now's a good time, my teacher always said.
Now is a good time. That's a great reminder again. Thank you. Thank you. And we have one last question from Gizem.
It's true, caregiving is such an under-recognized service and support for those in need. And so if any way we can all help each other, it's such a gift.
I might offer to what I'm learning in my elder years is consider surrounding yourself with people who are not afraid. And this is what I'm doing
We are on the way.
This community.
Right.
This is for me.
Some of that, some of that fear is as basic as
absolutely.
asking.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, some of that fear is even as basic as asking for what you need, asking for what you want, which Ethan did. We would never have known he wanted help unless he asked for it. And sometimes our pride and our feelings of shame or guilt come in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think the golden standard is to consider our dying. We would all probably think about being at home surrounded by our family instead of in some medical facility somewhere. Yep. And yet I know that even with my own biological family, there's not necessarily the fearlessness that I'm looking for. There's a lot of fear that can happen in our own biological family because of our attachments and because it's very common that the one place that can create a great deal of fear in this season is our own biological family if we haven't been engaging with this together in a very conscious way. So I just acknowledge that. So there's an opportunity to support or supplement that in a community way where there are people that are not afraid. If we can leave our fear at the door, that's one of the best medicines we can offer.
We are practicing. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Now I have to practice another thing of let go because I don't want to let you go.
That's death.
So, Aditi and Greg, it has been such a pleasure to have you here, to meet you. Thank you so much for your contribution to our festival.
Thank you.
We are hoping to see you again one day. Maybe in Nashville. Who
I
knows?
would love
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome. Come visit. Come visit.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Gamze and me. We were in the morning actually dreaming about it for next year, but
Oh,
we'll see.
good.
Beautiful place.
Keep dreaming.
Keep
It'll
dreaming,
happen.
yeah.
That's how it
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
Hopefully. Thank you so much again. And
Yeah.
I
Thank
wish you
you.
a beautiful day.
Thank
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
too. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.